If we have to pay full rent and trying to open with doing maybe 30% of the business that we were projecting to do, there is no way to stay open. There's no way that restaurants can make money. And I don't know how long restaurants could actually sustain losses.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Beth Albright, on-air food anchor with the Washington Post. My first guest today is one of the most accomplished restaurateurs in the world. I'm honored to introduce Chef Wolfgang Puck. Chef, welcome to Washington Post Live.
Yeah, good day. I'm so excited actually to talk to you in Washington. You know, I hope we'll open soon in Washington too. But next week we are opening Cut in New York, which is already a step forward. We got 40 seats outside on the sidewalk. And I think people are really excited to be able to go out. Everybody is tired of being bunkered up at home and get takeout food or cook at home and eat the same food. I have talked to many people that said just looking at the menu, being something served will be such a progress.
Well, it sounds like you've got the wheels turning. You're on President Trump's Great American Economic Revival Council as part of the Food and Beverage Group, and that includes everything from fast food to fine dining. And you spoke by phone with President Trump when the council was announced back in April. What have you been up to in the past 3 months as a council?
Well, you know, and on the council, we talked to some of the people in Congress, Congressman Thompson from Northern California, Congressman Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania. They are on a bipartisan committee, and they are trying to introduce a bill that the insurance companies have to pay for business interruption insurance. That's really the first step, and I think an important part, because we all pay insurance premiums for many, many years. Here it comes, the government shuts us down. It's not really the virus who shuts us down, but technically it's the government tells us what to do. But nobody wants to take responsibility for it now. And they all wash their hands and said, well, it doesn't say in your contract the virus is a subject. I said, the virus didn't come to me and says, shut down Wolfgang. It's you guys who did it. So that's one of the things I'm working on. And then the next big thing is how we're going to start the economy in the restaurant business again. The restaurant business is the biggest employer in the country next to the government. We employ 15.5 million people all over the country, and many, many restaurants won't be able to open up. So what I told the president is we have to get a stimulus package going. The stimulus package, what I thought would be the best, to really have business people who come to our restaurant and have business lunches, that they can deduct 100% of the expenses. That way, they will have an incentive to go out and send their customers, take out their customers and so forth. And then, you know, you always have somebody said, why do the rich people get a break? Well, it's a funny thing because the rich people also employ a lot of people who don't make a good living. In the restaurant business, we have busboys, dishwashers, parking attendants, kitchen helpers, you name them. They are a little bit above minimum wage. So if they don't have a job, they're going to be on unemployment. So we want the restaurant industry to really get something from the government, some help. And the stimulus package would be good. If we get it, I go to the farmer's market. I go to the fish market. I was this morning at the fish market. And, you know, I talked to the guy who owns the store and he said, you know, it's really hard. I have 10 drivers, but I only can use 4 right now. And I have so many people doing the filleting and this and that, but they are out of a job. So if the restaurants can open, if the businesses get a deduction, I think it will help us a lot.
Well, I want to dive into all those issues you just talked about because they're all incredibly important. I know that you've talked about them for the restaurant industry. Let me just ask first, has the president been receptive?
He was very receptive, especially to the business stimulus, and he also said he's going to look into the insurance, but then he cannot make an executive order to do that. It has to go through Congress, and that's really where everything gets held up. You know, these days you have one side and the other side. There's such a big divide in between the Democrats and Republicans that it's really hard to get anything moving, and I'm very disappointed, you know, of the leadership on both sides of the House and the president. How can we not move any faster? How can we not get at least some light at the end of the tunnel where they're going to say, okay, guys, I know you're suffering. I know you have so many people who are out of work. Let's try our best to really help you and move forward. You know, handing out money is one thing. Like they do now, the federal government gives everybody $600 a week. That does not entice people to come back to work. That does not entice businesses to send, go out to dinner or to lunch on a business date. So what really makes it happen is if the federal government will step in and says, here we have it. We have a stimulus plan. We have the insurance companies who are going to bail you out. And if the insurance company needs money, we'll bail them out. And that's the way it should be done.
Well, it's an interesting distinction because you're a restaurateur who has many restaurants around the world, and everybody, of course, is concerned with the safety of guests, the safety of employees who want to go back on the job but don't want to catch COVID-19 while they're working for a paycheck. So have you noticed a difference in the way that America is dealing with it that you just talked about versus the United Arab Emirates, where you have a restaurant, or, for example, or Singapore?
Yeah, well, I think everywhere it's a little bit different. Naturally, our main concern is our employees, that they are safe, and our guests, that they are safe. Because if that doesn't happen, it will be a big problem. You know, then we're going to just get shut down. So all of our waiters here, for example, in LA or in Las Vegas, they wear a mask and they wear a shield. Then in the kitchen, everybody has a mask also. And I think that's really an important part that we really have to tell. The whole country has to wear a mask, and that's it. You know, when you are out of your own home, put on a mask. It's not the end of the world. And I think for me, if we want to reduce the COVID-19, that we have to take care of ourselves. You know, the government, the police, whatever they can do, whatever they try to do, but everybody has to be responsible. You know, you can say, oh, I don't gonna get it, but you might have it and then give it to your grandmother or give it to somebody else, you know, who is very susceptible, who has maybe a bad immune system or whatever. So I think that's really a hard part. And I think I really have to commend the governor of New York, where the pandemic was the worst. And now they're out on top. And you have states like Texas, Florida, Arizona, even California, who are lagging behind. And it's really sad to see that. And I think for other restaurants where we are, for example, in London, we just opened Cut. In Singapore, we opened Cut and also Spargo. We are at the Marina Bay Sands there, but only for Singaporean. They don't allow anybody in there. So if I want to go and cook over there, I cannot go to Singapore right now. But I'm very excited already now that we are opening Cut in New York next week. We ordered all the planters outside, umbrellas outside. Now I have just to talk to the weather god up there that it doesn't rain too much at night. So then we will be okay. And I think people are very excited. They started to call already and says, I want to be the first one there. I want to be at Cut whenever you open.
So some of your restaurants received the federal Paycheck Protection Program. You've been vocal about that. You were also vocal about returning some of that money. And I believe you can confirm this if it's correct, that you've said that you were going to close some restaurants permanently in your group. So can you talk about your process with that? And also, I know you're a mentor to a lot of chefs who own independent restaurants. How have you advised them about this?
Well, all our restaurants are really differently made up, their financial structure. Some of them I have investors, some of them we are in partnership with hotel groups like the Dorchester Group, and they are very helpful and they paid people too. They're on their payroll, all of our employees. In some of our restaurants, we got the PPP, thank God, and then we have our worldwide, where we do licensing, and all the restaurants in the airport, there I returned the money. We didn't get, no millions. We got, I think, 600,000 or something like that. But I said, you know what? I want to be a good citizen. We are okay financially there. I'm going to return the money.
So it's interesting, you were talking before about the issues, the dual issues that you're really being vocal about, which is number one, the federal stimulus, and number two, insurance companies paying out claims for businesses shutting down. And I appreciate that you made the legal distinction between whether the government shuts the restaurant down or the pandemic shuts the restaurant down, because it seems like it's really riding on that. But I know that there's legislation on the federal, state, local level. Independent chefs have started an advisory group. What would that look like? I mean, if you had your way, what would the federal stimulus look like? What would the insurance company payouts look like?
Well, I think hopefully, when you have a flooding somewhere or you have earthquake insurance, you get paid by the insurance. The same thing is with that. The insurance should pay it off. And I know they might need the money from the government, and they will. The government will subsidize them, just like the government does with airlines and so forth. So I think that has to be done, because there are probably over 200,000 small restaurants who will never be able to open if they don't get money from the insurance. The landlords are very tough. They said, you don't pay, well, you know what, I give you 3 months, and then if I don't get anything, you have to go somewhere else. People have to feed their families. People have to feed their kids, send them back to school now. How does that going to work out for parents who work in a restaurant as a waiter, as a cook, whatever it is? Their kids go to school, and they have to go to work at 4 in the afternoon and not be home before midnight. So that's going to be really complicated. Or on the other hand, not have a job at all. So I think it's really important. And I think the stimulus program, if businesses can deduct their entertainment expenses in restaurant, that will employ many more people. And that's what we want. We don't want handouts. We don't want people staying out of work. We want people back at work.
So now we have a question from a viewer, David Lake from Georgia. And David asks, how can restaurants survive in the long term with ongoing limited in-dining occupancy and other restrictions?
It is really difficult, because a lot of restaurants out there don't have space outside. The way it's built, the way they are, is only inside. I must say, here in Beverly Hills at Spargo, the city of Beverly Hills was very helpful. They said, Wolfgang, whatever you want, we try to accommodate. So now we have 18 tables on the sidewalk outside. It's more than 50% of our indoor dining room now is outside, because indoor is closed down for sure. They actually said, if you want, we can take one car lane away, because we are in a cul-de-sac, so it's not as important to have all the lanes. We have 4 lanes really. So they're going to take one lane away, and we're going to build a platform out there to be able to put more tables out there. But I know it is really difficult for people who have a small restaurant. But even like in Georgia, you hear that Georgia was okay for a while, and then they open up and it becomes a problem. So because we did not have a federal response to it, where the president would have gotten together all the governors and said, you know what, we are all on the same boat. We are in the United States of America. Let's fix that as fast and as difficult it might be at the beginning, but let's fix it so we can get over it. So now every state is tinkering around in a different way, and that slowed the whole progress down, I believe, tremendously.
Well, to your point,
it's going to be difficult for small restaurants who have no outdoor seating, what they're going to do, how we're going to open. And on one hand, we want the pandemic to go away. And on one hand, we want the business to start also. So that's really an important way. How are we going to start everything if you don't have the space outside. And I think the cities should be responsible also and check if a restaurant can get some outside table. Maybe go to the next store, who is maybe an electric store, who is closed at night anyway. Let them put tables there, so that way they can make maybe a living, at least break even and have people working. So we did that, I think, at Chinois, for example. We're opening Chinois next week, 2 outside. We only have the inside 2. So I said, what are I going to do? Rip off the roof or ask the city? So now the city of Santa Monica built these roadblocks on the street, took 1 lane away, and the restaurants on this street got part of the road where we set a row of tables. So it's not as big as the restaurant inside, but at least it's going to give me an option where I can have some people coming back to work. And the customers are so happy to go out again. I mean, when they call up now already and says, oh, thank God we can go out. I'm tired of takeout from Chinois. I'm tired of heating up food at home. I want to be served. I want to have the real deal.
Well, we have another audience question from Lisa Deutsche in Sweden. Do you think the pandemic can help people's relationship with cooking and food? How can restaurants help?
You know, it is really true. There are so many people, especially in America, home cooking is not a big thing. Because of the pandemic, I did some online cooking classes and so forth, and people really are happy to cook at home. But after a while, it gets tiring. The cleanup, the shopping, and everything, it's a lot of work. And I think, though, in America now, because of the pandemic, there are more people cooking at home than ever. I think also, but we have to think how we're going to reopen now the restaurants, you know, and people thought for 3 months, 4 months, you know, it's okay, but people are very antsy to stay home. And thank God, where we live, you know, people have houses. So it's different than if you're in a big building with apartments on top, underneath, your left and right and so forth. And you have kids to get them out. It's difficult. So I did, actually, you can see on my Instagram, I cook with my son Oliver, and we make up dishes easily to do at home too. Why do I do it? To keep him occupied, to keep him thinking. I have him write down recipes, and now kids are calling him up and says, your grilled chicken with grits and the spicy cheese looked so good. And I served it with grilled peaches and a spicy marmalade, and my wife loved it, the kids liked it, and now Oliver's friends call him and says, Oliver, send me the recipe. So it's a good thing to bring the family together. And I always said, you know, families who cook together stay together. And that's really an important part, I think, to enjoy a meal together. And that was a good part, I think, you know, if you think in the food industry, that people had to stay home and do all the things. But I think people, kids, everybody is a little bit tired of doing the same thing.
Well, to that point, a lot of restaurants have pivoted and have started selling groceries or meal kits through the restaurant, just because the food supply is set up to go through the restaurants right now. And so, have you done that at any of your restaurants?
Sure. We do a little takeout in New York at Cut for the building and for a few surrounding buildings. We do takeout at Chinois on Main, where we give them the Chinois experience. People can pick up a 6-course meal. We did take out at Spargo here in Beverly Hills, but now the restaurant is open, so I stopped doing takeout because it's an interruption when people come in picking up food. We want to serve the guests and give the guests an experience when they come to our restaurant. So that's really the most important part for me right now. But takeout at least got us out of the house. We went to the restaurant. I could go to the market, buy some stuff, and then we gave people a great deal. But it's not a replacement for the restaurant experience.
Yeah, but some restaurants have done actual ingredients, right? Like selling the steak so people can take them at home, because that's the way the food supply system works right now. And so have you thought about doing that? Have you done it?
We did a little bit, but mostly we gave people a cooked meal or things they just had to finish cooking. Like if we made macaroni and cheese, they were ready. They just have to pop them in the oven for 10 minutes at 350 and serve them. So that was easy. I did some cooking classes where we shipped all the ingredients. For example, for a mushroom risotto, for a salad, they had the ingredients. And then they cooked it alongside with me. We even put a few cocktails in there, some Negroni, my favorite cocktail, and so forth. So that way they can enjoy, cook at home, cook next to me, and I went slow enough. And then we also send them like a braised short rib, which they just had to reheat. So they got the whole package of a bottle of wine, some cocktails, the rice, only to make risotto. There are 10 or 12 ingredients, from the Parmesan cheese to the rice, to the wine, to the mushroom, peas, whatever we had. It's a lot of stuff, but everything was weighted out. And everybody was excited because they all said, oh my God, it came out so good. I didn't know I could make risotto at home.
Well, that sounds delicious. Also, we've been talking a lot about takeout, and of course, a lot of people have been going to Uber Eats or apps like that, Grubhub, to have food delivered. Do you think those kinds of apps are good or bad for the restaurant industry? There've been a lot of discussion about that.
I'm saying the good thing is, it's to get food to the people who need it. I think all these DoorDash and all these people are great, especially for, fast food restaurants. But for really upscale restaurants, I don't think it's a good thing. Because if you order, and these people from DoorDash or Grubhub, they go to 5-6 restaurants, pick up the food. So maybe 3 hours later, you get your food delivered. And I don't think that's a good experience there for us, And we had mostly takeout. We have people lined up, obviously, in Los Angeles. Everybody has a car. So it was easy. I remember when we did Wednesday night, we did fried chicken. That was our best night of the whole week. It was our slowest night, and then we did fried chicken with all the grits and mashed potatoes and salad and peas and gravy and so forth. So people were in line with the cars for 10 minutes, and we had 8 tables set up on the sidewalk for people to pick up, so that way there was no interaction. They were out with a walkie-talkie. We did 400 customers a night, which was amazing, but 95% got picked up. Very few people used DoorDash or anything like that. But before that, when you put the menu on DoorDash, if they take 25% from the top line, they are the one making the money and not the restaurant, because you only can get that high. After a while, people are going to say, this is too expensive. I'm going to order it once, but not on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So I think for us to get a good delivery way, that's really important. And I think they put in legislation where they cannot charge like they used to before, and that it becomes more reasonable.
Well, it's interesting. Tom Colicchio was on Washington Post Live last month, and he's said that he believes that half of the restaurants in the country, in America, will not reopen. Do you think then that apps and delivery can help prevent that from happening, and do you agree with him?
Well, a lot of restaurants going to be closed. I don't think it will be half of them, but a lot of them, maybe 25%, because these are all the small mom and pop operations. The big companies, and we read about Shake Shack getting a fat check. We read about Wood Chris Steakhouse getting a fat check, and so many other big businesses where it's not necessary. I at least said, what, I don't feel guilty taking money for Chinois, which is a restaurant which is open for 37 years. And now it's doing okay, but not so great anymore. That I would say we are washing cash. And so we took it up, but the rest, I sent the money back. I think I didn't want to feel like, I'm abusing the system. And a lot of people abuse the system that way. And I know the government tried their best, but how to control it is really hard, everything. To give the money to the banks. I think they should have given the money to the insurance companies and get the money who really needs it. That would have been a better way in my thought. So, but I think what is done is done. Hopefully, we get some more payroll protection plan money for the people who work, for the people who come to work, not for the people to stay at home. Because that way, if they come to work, they have the spending money, and hopefully people go back to a normal way. And especially at the pandemic now, who wants to go out for lunch? Like I talked to Danielle in New York, and he says, nobody going to come for lunch now. It was difficult before. And he said too that before they put down the deduction. You know, when Jimmy Carter was president, he talked about these 3 martini lunches, and there's always somebody in Congress that said, let's cut this on taxes, let's cut there, we're going to make more money, spend more money on the military, it's okay, but not to spend more money on business innovation, on business stimulus is totally crazy, because we want America to be at work. We want these people in the restaurants to survive, go back to work, and then hopefully we restart the economy, and sooner or later we get back to normal. I must tell you, we have a catering company. You know, Eric, the catering chef, called me up this morning and says, I just got a party for 20 people in somebody's home. He was so excited. I thought it was the Academy Awards he's talking about. So just to get the smallest business, you know, it's something, a positive sign.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about this. There are experts in several fields that say that racism in America is also a pandemic. And my question for you is, how does racism in America intersect with the American restaurant industry? And is the issue of race and racism being considered by the president's council right now?
You know, I definitely think each one has to do their own thing. My son Byron, who is with me, who went to Cornell, he laid out a plan for our restaurant company, what we should do, how we should attract more African-American people into the fine dining scene. You know, it's very difficult to get them to come to our restaurant, because they think, oh, there are too many white people in the restaurant working, too many Latino people, maybe they don't want us there. No, it's the opposite. If I can get more African-American come to a restaurant and show them that as a cook or a waiter, you can make a great living and you can feed your family, you know, as long as they do a great job. Like I have one African-American busboy. He is, his name is Conrad. And you could see he's probably one of our best guys. I said, you should be a waiter. He said, well, I'm nervous to be a waiter. I said, you don't have to be nervous. If you mess up on table, just tell them you're sorry. It's not the end of the day. But he's a bright kid. And, you know, I have it in my family. My wife is from Ethiopia, and my kids are African-American. So even I tell them, don't forget, you're a little bit Austrian too. But even my son, who is 15 years old, said, you know, if I walk the street and they walk around with a hoodie on, and we live in a nice neighborhood, and he said, you know, a lady walked out me, she saw me, she walked across the street. So this is such a deeply ingrained problem in America that I think we have to work on it. And it was really sad what happened, or good even what happened in the last few weeks here and in every city. But looking at the police, not that we should get rid of the police, but they have to be responsible. They have to be held responsive. If they do a thing which is totally outrageous, which shouldn't be happening, I think like this guy in Minneapolis, or this guy shooting somebody from the back, I think it's really, really, really terrible. And I don't know how in our country we can actually accept a thing like that, and how they don't train the police, how they don't train law enforcement better to say, okay, let them run away. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. You know, we have his car, we have his driver license. What are you going to do?
Chef Wolfgang Puck, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Please stay tuned, because we'll be back with Chef Marcus Samuelsson right after this short video. If you're just joining us, I'm Mary Beth Albright, on-air food anchor for the Washington Post. My next guest is an accomplished chef and restaurateur, and you probably know him from television. Chef Marcus Samuelsson, welcome to Washington Post Live. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I got the live outside Harlem background. I ran from the restaurant because we're in the middle of serving about 1,000 people there. as we do with, our partnership with World Central Kitchen, and it got very busy. So I was like, you know what, I'm better off just running home and do it from my iPhone.
Well, we're glad to have you in any way that you can be here. And that's my first question, is that you converted your Harlem restaurant, Red Rooster, into a community kitchen where people can get free meals. And you also started doing that in Newark, New Jersey, and in Miami. So my question for that is, how did you make the decision to turn your restaurants into community kitchens rather than pivoting to takeout, as so many fine dining, as so many restaurants are doing?
Well, first of all, it was great. I got the segment before, and to see a food icon like Wolfgang Puck, someone I admire so much, was really nice to see him in a segment as well. So it was great to see that. We early days in March, we didn't know what would happen with our industry. This had never happened to us, but someone who did know was Jose Andres and World Central Kitchen. So I called Jose, and that's the beauty of having great relationships and partnerships. And he said, "We know how to serve safe. We had masks and we had gloves, and we know about social distancing way before anybody else knew it." So it was living in Harlem, living in a community that is so enriched by culture. But I knew that Harlem would be hit very, very hard. And it was the right call, because since we started this, we served over 200,000 people between Harlem, Newark, and Miami. And, we converted that to this tomorrow, actually, it accumulates into a fundraiser on ABC together with World Central Kitchen called Harlem Serves Up. So we have some of the biggest chefs in the world and some of the biggest celebrities in the world supporting our community. So it's a big deal for us, and it saved giving food to food insecure and first responders, but it's also created jobs back for our industry and saved restaurants here in Harlem, Newark, and Miami.
Well, and in Harlem, the City Department of Health numbers show that part of Harlem, the area of Manhattan, that has had the highest death rate from COVID-19. So my question is, what does the line look like of people waiting for food, for a free meal from Red Rooster, and how has that changed since March?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not surprised that, first of all, the pandemic have really shown the have and don't have in America, right? People in Harlem and in the Bronx, this community of communities, predominantly of Black and Brown people, and it's shown that most African Americans, Indigenous, and Latinos don't have jobs where they can actually work from home, right? It's not a coincidence that these numbers are hitting our communities harder, right? In terms of the line, in the beginning, it was a lot of homeless and a lot of people that were food insecure, but the line has changed, because now the line, probably a bartender that just lost their job a couple of weeks ago, a teacher that can't go back to work, you know what I mean? Like, it's gone from people that might are home insecure or food insecure to people that are working in middle class. And to do this collectively, not just with World Central Kitchen and us, but actually 15 restaurants in Harlem that signed down to serve about 300 to 400 people a day, which means that we're serving in Harlem alone 4,000 people. And we even have a bigger need. That's why we decided to do the fundraiser Harlem Serves Up this year. Restaurants are not, it's going to take a very long time for restaurants to come back. But imagine in Black and Brown Indigenous communities where access of cash is much harder, and there's been systemic racism going on for decades and generations. So the way our community is going to come back is going to take a very long time. So this is a very, very important time, and we need people to support us at this moment.
Well, that goes to my next question, which is, we have a nationwide discussion about how there are dual pandemics right now, COVID and racism, and it's been widely reported, as you talked about, that COVID is disproportionately affecting the Black community and communities of color. Is the path forward for restaurants affected by both COVID and racism?
Absolutely. I mean, there's two pandemics going on, right? And we're doing a very important work in both. I think that this spring and early summer of what happened, with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery, you can go down the list. It's horrific. but out of that, at least people have responded peacefully, and major changes are happening, and people are changing way before our government is changing, and eventually the government will change too because people have changed. So this is a very, very important, I would say, third uprising. If you think about it from the day of slavery ending to the first civil rights movement, and this will be the third wave of this. And this is globally. This is people have had enough. This is not just in New York and Los Angeles, San Francisco. Over 3,000 cities in America and globally, people have taken a stand for Black Lives Matters, which is incredible. But being a small business owner today, it's very, very difficult, specifically for Black, Brown, and Indigenous, because A, we don't have generational wealth. B, we're dealing with systemic racism, and which means that we can't get access to bank loans. So it's very, very difficult. But at least we're having a conversation about it right now. And change is going to come. We know that. If people go to the voting booth, that's where the real change will happen.
We'll definitely continue with that conversation. A viewer from Miami, Erica Rosine, wrote in with this question. We want to get to this. What is the outlook for your restaurant in Miami and the future of your project with Jose Andres, feeding people from your kitchen there? As a Miamian, I am very grateful for this.
Well, thank you so much. As New York was doing better, Florida would hit with that second wave, and averaging now about between 12 and 15,000 new cases a day. So we decided to close the creamery. We just can't. It's just we want safety for our staff and safety for our guests is number one. But we're going to come back. We're going to open Red Rooster in Miami sometime this fall, and we're going to continue to serve. That's why we're doing fundraising, because World Central Kitchen won't work without fundraising. So without money, and so that's why we're doing this important initiative as Harlem Serves Up, and on the ABC fundraiser that we're having tomorrow at 7 o'clock. But World Central Kitchen has been an incredible partner, but so has the restaurant workers too. You don't think about restaurant workers necessarily as first responders, but in this moment we definitely have them. And there's about 11 million people in America that work. There are restaurant workers in independent restaurants. About 16 million people when you think about all the different services that goes to those restaurants. And right now 50% of are unemployed. So this is a big, big, big moment. We need help, we need support, and we need structural change.
So as someone who has traveled extensively throughout the country and the world, right now we're living in a divisive time. We're divisive and we're contactless, but people always talk about how food can gather the world together. How do you see that happening right now when we're so divisive and we can't be together?
First of all, divisive or not, it's about taking care. First of all, we need a government that wants to govern all people, not just a segment of the population, right? Sometimes people talk about big government is bad. We need the right size government. And when you have a crisis like this, right now you have, President 45, he's taking pictures with Goya versus actually, and his family, versus actually focusing on the fact that it's north of 135,000 people that died from COVID.
One more.
Pardon me?
Yeah, well, this is the last question. Tomorrow on July 18th, I'm sorry, can you hear? Sorry, I
tomorrow
think
July 18th.
Yeah, tomorrow Harlem Serves Up is going to be doing this fundraiser. Can you tell us who's going to be on it?
Well, we have some amazing chefs from our community. Melba Wilson, iconic Melba from Melba Restaurant. We have all the small business owners here from Lolo Seafood Shack and so on. But we also have major celebrities that came to support. Doug Fresh. We have Common. We have John Legend, Brian McKnight, and Cameron Hall's going to host it, and so many more. It's going to be an incredible hour. We're extremely grateful for all the celebrities and the chefs, the small business owners coming together, because this is an important moment. And even if the government is not doing it, we're going to do it as a community.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our discussion with Chef Marcus Samuelsson today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to your cell phone company for making it happen. Thank you.
Also, thank you to my son Stein for not interrupting us, because he's right there and wants to jump in.
Yeah, I have a 12-year-old. He does everything on my phone too. I want to thank Wolfgang Puck and Marcus Samuelsson for joining us today. And we have an incredible slate of programming for you coming up next week, including interviews with Dr. Anthony Fauci, SNL's Colin Jost, Madame Christine Lagarde, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, and Ford Foundation President Darren Walker. So head to WashingtonPostLive.com for all the details. I'm Mary Beth Albright. Thank you so much for watching.